This video was fully edited by human beings. It takes a lot of time and effort to produce these videos, so be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share the video as much as you can. Enjoy. Cristiano Ronaldo. Playing at the top level from the early 2000s all the way into 2026, Ronaldo built one of the longest and most decorated careers the sport has ever seen. Across that span, he represented Portugal in 6 separate World Cups, appearing in 2006, 2010, 2014, 2018, 2022, and finally 2026, a level of longevity no other elite player has matched. He led Portugal through multiple tournaments, carried the team on his back through qualifying campaigns, and delivered moments of brilliance on the biggest stage, often single-handedly dragging a talented but inconsistent squad through difficult groups. His closest brush with glory came in 2006, when Portugal reached the semifinals as a young, hungry team built around his emerging talent, only to fall to France in a tense, low-scoring match. In later tournaments, his role shifted from a pure goal scorer to more of a captain and elder statesman, guiding younger players while still producing flashes of the finishing that made him famous. In 2018, he scored a hat-trick against Spain in one of the most memorable group stage performances of the decade. Yet Portugal still exited in the round of 16. In this most recent tournament, at 41 years old, he helped Portugal escape a tricky group before scoring a penalty against Croatia, only for Spain to end his run once again in the round of 16, this time through a stoppage time winner. It was a fittingly dramatic close to a story that had run for 2 decades, with Ronaldo visibly emotional as he walked around the pitch afterward, applauding the fans who had followed him from his first tournament to his last. Injuries, tough draws, and the sheer difficulty of winning a month-long global tournament with a talented but not always dominant national squad all played a part in denying him the trophy across those 6 attempts. His individual brilliance, more than 2 decades of records, and his status as one of the greatest goal scorers the game has ever produced make this absence particularly striking to fans who always expected history to eventually work out differently for him. George Best. Active from the early 1960s through the early 1980s, Best never once got to play in a World Cup, finishing his career with 0 tournament appearances. Northern Ireland, the country he represented, simply never qualified during his playing years, despite producing a handful of talented squads. His flair, balance, and instinctive dribbling made him a symbol of 1960s football, largely built around his club career with Manchester United, where he won league titles and a European Cup. Without the platform of international tournaments, his reputation rests almost entirely on domestic performances, which still resonate strongly enough that his name remains part of conversations about the sport's greatest talents. Even decades after his career ended, and long after most of his contemporaries have been forgotten by casual fans. Alfredo Di Stéfano. Playing from the mid-1940s until the mid-1960s, Di Stéfano also finished his career without a single World Cup appearance. A strange gap for someone considered one of the most complete forwards in football history. Born in Argentina, he later played for Spain, but complicated circumstances involving both countries, along with disputes between federations, meant he never featured in the tournament for either nation. His dominance for Real Madrid during their golden era in European competition gave him legendary status, as he combined scoring instinct with the vision of a playmaker and the work rate of a defender. The absence of a World Cup appearance, let alone a title, remains one of the strangest footnotes in an otherwise complete resume, often cited as proof that even the most gifted players need favorable circumstances to write a complete story. Ferenc Puskás. Puskás played from the early 1940s through the mid-1960s and appeared in a single World Cup in 1954, which turned out to be the defining tournament of his career. He led Hungary's legendary team of that decade, a side so dominant that it went unbeaten for years and was nicknamed the Mighty Magyars. Hungary reached the final as heavy favorites that year, having already beaten West Germany earlier in the same tournament by a wide margin, only to lose unexpectedly in the final itself in what became known as the Miracle of Bern. That defeat denied Puskás the one achievement that would have completed his legacy, and it remains one of the most studied upsets in football history. His goal-scoring numbers and technical ability remain some of the most admired in the sport, but that single final loss is often the first thing mentioned whenever his name comes up in World Cup discussions. Eusébio. Active from the early 1960s until the late 1970s, Eusébio played in just one World Cup in 1966 and made it count more than almost anyone on this list. Representing Portugal, he was the tournament's leading scorer and one of its standout performers, helping his country reach the semifinals for the first time in their history. His performance against North Korea, where Portugal came back from a 3-goal deficit largely due to his individual brilliance, remains one of the most celebrated comebacks in tournament history. Despite that success, Portugal lost to England in the semifinal, and Eusébio never had another opportunity, as the national team failed to qualify for the tournament again during the remainder of his career. His speed, power, and finishing ability made him one of the most feared attackers of his era, and his performances in 1966 are still remembered as a high point for Portuguese football. Johan Cruyff. Cruyff's career ran from the mid-1960s to the mid-1980s, and he appeared in exactly one World Cup in 1974, the tournament that came to define his international legacy. As the leader of the Dutch total football movement, he guided the Netherlands to the final that year with a style of play that reshaped how the sport was understood tactically, influencing coaches for decades afterward. West Germany defeated them in that final, despite the Netherlands playing what many still consider more attractive and progressive football, and the team could not recover the same momentum in later tournaments during his playing days. Cruyff's influence went far beyond results, shaping generations of coaches and players who adopted his ideas about positioning, movement, and space, ideas that eventually became the foundation of modern possession-based football. The trophy eluded him, but his impact on football's evolution is considered just as significant as any title would have been. Weah. Playing from the mid-1980s until the early 2000s, Weah never appeared in a World Cup, largely due to Liberia's inability to qualify throughout his career amid limited resources and political instability at home. As a striker, he won individual honors at the highest level, including recognition as one of the best players in the world during the mid-1990s. A rare achievement for someone from a nation with such limited footballing infrastructure. Without the depth or squad support to lift his national team through qualification, his brilliance was confined mostly to club football in Europe, where he became a fan favorite. His story is often used as an example of how national circumstances can limit a player's international legacy, regardless of personal ability. And it later inspired his transition into politics back home. Zlatan Ibrahimović. Ibrahimović played internationally from the early 2000s through 2016 and appeared in 2 World Cups during that stretch, in 2002 and 2006. Though Sweden never advanced past the round of 16 in either. His absence from the 2018 tournament, which came after his international retirement and coincided with Sweden's surprising run to the quarterfinals without him, remains one of the more debated cases in modern football. Sweden's failure to qualify at all for 2010 and 2014 meant a large stretch of his prime years passed without any World Cup football whatsoever. That gap, sitting right in the middle of his most productive scoring years at club level, still frustrates fans who felt his talent deserved a longer tournament story. Ryan Giggs. Playing from the early 1990s until 2014, Giggs finished his international career with 0 World Cup appearances, as Wales failed to qualify throughout his entire time with the national team. His pace, dribbling, and longevity made him one of the most decorated club players of his generation, admired across Europe for his consistency over nearly 2 decades at Manchester United. The absence of major tournament football limited the global stage on which fans could witness his abilities, confining much of his legacy to domestic competition. Wales eventually broke that qualification drought years after his retirement, adding a bittersweet note to an otherwise trophy-filled career that many felt deserved a World Cup chapter. Gabriel Batistuta. Active from the late 1980s through the mid-2000s, Batistuta appeared in 3 World Cups in 1994, 1998, and 2002, and scored in every single one of them, a rare feat that highlights his individual consistency. Argentina, however, could not go far enough during his most productive years, exiting earlier than expected given the talent on the roster each time. His name is frequently mentioned among strikers whose World Cup performances outpaced their team's overall results, a pattern that repeated itself across all 3 tournaments he played in. Paolo Maldini. Maldini's career stretched from the mid-1980s to the early 2000s, and he represented Italy across 4 World Cups, In 1990, 1994, 1998, and 2002, his best chance came in 1994, when Italy reached the final, only to lose on penalties to Brazil after a tense, largely defensive match. His consistency, composure, and leadership at the back made him a cornerstone of Italian football for nearly 2 decades, both at club and international level, rarely making the kind of costly mistakes associated with lesser defenders. Despite 4 tournaments and the respect he commanded across the sport, that penalty shootout remains the closest he ever came. A moment still remembered as one of the more painful near misses in World Cup history. Andriy Shevchenko. Playing from the mid-1990s into the early 2010s, Shevchenko appeared in only one World Cup, in 2006, the first tournament Ukraine ever qualified for as an independent nation. By that point, he was past his physical peak, and the team was eliminated in the quarterfinals after a promising run through the earlier rounds. That single appearance arrived later in his career than fans might have hoped, and it never fully reflected the goal-scoring talent he had shown during his best years in European club competition. Luís Figo. Active from the early 1990s until 2009, Figo appeared in 2 World Cups, in 2002 and 2006, after Portugal had missed qualification for the tournament throughout most of his early career. His time at some of the biggest clubs in the world, and a Ballon d'Or award, made the gap in his trophy cabinet even more noticeable. Portugal's so-called golden generation, which included several gifted players alongside him, consistently fell short of the final stages during major tournaments, often losing to teams considered less talented on paper. Their best result during his career actually came at Euro 2004, a continental tournament rather than the World Cup, leaving a gap that many felt did not match the level of talent surrounding him at the time. Robert Lewandowski. Playing from the mid-2000s onward, Lewandowski appeared in 2 World Cups, in 2018, where Poland exited in the group stage, and 2022, where he managed to carry Poland all the way to the round of 16. His story took a final, disappointing turn in the build-up to the 2026 tournament, when Poland finished second in their qualifying group behind the Netherlands and were forced into the playoff path. After grinding through the playoff rounds with Lewandowski leading the way as captain, Poland lost the decisive final to Sweden, missing out on the 2026 World Cup entirely, and closing the door on what many had assumed would be his last realistic shot at the tournament. Poland's qualification campaigns throughout his career came with limited squad depth around him, and despite his personal scoring record at club level, where he consistently ranked among the top forwards in Europe, the national team could never convert his individual brilliance into a deep tournament run or even a final World Cup appearance to send him off. His situation stands as one of the clearest examples of a generational goal scorer, whose international legacy never came close to matching the trophies and records he built at club level. Which football player among these is your favorite? Do you think we should have included other players? Comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe and share the video with other football fans. Thanks for watching.